everybody, and welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. You might be thinking, ooh, a movie about a giant bear? That must have been a Matt Kelly pick, but you would be wrong, because this one came out of left field from Kyle. Not only did he pick The Prophecy from 1979, he also he finally set us free from the year 1993 with this pick.
I'm a little sad.
I almost didn't want to. Yeah. I almost regretted it.
Well, that does free us up for some weirder shit coming down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so. So, I have almost no notes on this movie. It's a movie I've seen a couple times, so I'm not too concerned about that. But this is one of those movies where it is just like so slow and boring, and then something insane happens. And it's almost like you're asleep and startled awake. And then, like, just start. It's like, this is like some nice, like, white noise. Like, it's like a sound machine playing. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, it's a chainsaw versus an axe fight. And then it's like, okay, white noise back. Oh, it's a sleeping bag scene. White noise. It's just
raccoon.
Like,
and then,
it's just like it's random. It's wild.
It is to me. So I mean, to be honest, I've only seen it once before, and I picked it because, as we've talked about here, it's just one of those covers that always stood out to me. When I went to go to the video rental store in Vermont with my grandparents, the prophecy cover always scared the shit out of me. I didn't know what it was. I also at the time had these toys that weren't mad balls, but they were squishy balls with fluid inside that also had some sort of like creature or monster.
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. They were.
And I'm so much older than you.
Yeah, they existed.
What's behind the curtain is the fact that I was reminded today that Kyle is almost a decade younger than me.
Yeah. That's you only get one of those a year, Scott. I'll remind you again next year sometime around the same time. But you know what it was? I'm sorry, completely. It was a Goosebumps toy with the hamster in the green goo.
From Monster Blood.
Yes. Now I distinctly. So it reminded me a whole hell of a lot of that. And I was like a scarier version of that. And then I hadn't seen it. I didn't see it until maybe like 7-8 years ago. And yeah, no, you're totally right. It's slow, and then it has those like pops of interesting things. And I think that's because Frankenheimer's he's an action director. He's an action thriller director, and this screams a horror. This is a horror movie in concept. Even though there is like the class, the land battle and sort of this socio-political thing, but it's like horror always had that, and I feel like he as a director just came at it. And we also see this with The Island of Dr. Moreau as a sci-fi. Like as a sci-fi / classical, like that whole story. I mean,
same
of how
director
he got
too.
There is,
you know what I mean?
Yes,
like it's
right.
It's he.
Sorry, that's what Kyle was. That's why he mentioned Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah, just to clarify for the listeners out there.
Oh,
yes, yeah. He's the same director.
Yeah, the director.
Worth checking Lost Soul, the documentary about the making of that. Even though Richard Stanley's a piece of shit.
I was going to say, even though we later found out that Richard Stanley is awful.
Yeah.
But
but Lost Soul has a story. Is so much better than Island of Dr. Moreau. And so I after watching Lost Soul, 60% of me wants to go back and rewatch the actual film, but then it's like 40% wants to go watch it, but there's a bigger percentage that's like, no, that movie's absolute garbage.
All right, so I think I have this nailed. I didn't research this, so don't hold my feet to the fire, you diehard listeners. But I'm pretty sure episode 64 of this podcast, we not only covered that movie. It was almost like a double episode because we watched that and Lost Souls and discussed both of them. And if I'm remembering this correctly, that movie was picked by not Scott or I, but our third co-host, who also didn't show up for that particular recording.
Really? I don't remember that part.
So it almost seems like he tossed a grenade into us for no real reason.
He's a lost soul, man.
He is a lost soul. But yeah, the prophecy it's like when it works. This movie is not without its fans. We'll start with that. Like Stephen King has spoken very highly.
Stephen King is
about
one of
this
his
movie.
favorites. It's crazy.
It feels very King.
Quentin,
He's like, oh, Maine?
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino has spoke really highly about this film. Like he refers to it as a very stupid movie, but he's like, there's just I think he said there's something charming about this very stupid movie, which it's like, I 100% agree with that. Like as much as I know that this movie is bad and dumb, every time I put it on, I am at least a little charmed by it.
Yeah.
And I can't put my finger on why. But also, Trey Parker and Matt Stone are clearly big fans because they literally created a character inspired by the villain, which was Man Bear Pig. That was like an ongoing character on their show. But yeah, it's I think that this movie also is like trying to do too many political commentaries at the exact same time, because it's like talking about dealing like the way that we've mistreated First People. It's talking about pollution. It's also talking about like kind of a weird pro-choice story like mixed in there. It's like
that
there's
was
just
such a weird addition that I never. Yeah. I mean, so this is only my second, maybe my first full watch, because I've watched this movie before, but didn't really pay attention. Really, all I used to give a shit about was the sleeping bag kill. And we'll get to why in a second. I'm sure that longtime listeners know already, but I'll share that story in a second. But that one section that I caught on with an actual active viewing this time gave me a little bit of an ick, but I get it. It's just trying. It gave me an ick because it seems really antiquated and fucked up to try and humanize your female lead in that way. It just kind of turns her into a caricature, and I didn't appreciate it.
It does, but you know what? I walked away from it because one of the things that I did like about it, and I for starters, it shouldn't be in there at all, right?
Right.
But
yeah, like you know how many problems could have been fixed if they hadn't tried to save the fucking mutant bear baby. The mutant bear mom wouldn't have come after you, idiots.
Yeah. Look, that's many a giant monster movie plots. I feel like at least 3 Jaws movies deal with them taking a baby. Orca's about killing a baby. Like, it's just, if you touch the baby, things get bad.
It's almost like those characters should have known that there's been enough history even in
I've seen
popular
this in a
culture
movie before.
beforehand. They should have known.
But I will say this. So I was thinking about this when I was watching the movie, because we get introduced to the fact that she's pregnant, that her husband doesn't want to have kids, and her coworkers, like, don't let him force you into an abortion if you don't want it. And what I like about that line in retrospect is I'm like, you know what? We do talk about pro-choice constantly, and it always just gets put on the choice of having an abortion. But also part of that choice is if someone wants you to have an abortion and you as the woman want to keep the baby, like, it is still your body, your choice. So I'm like, you know what? That is a side of pro-choice that we don't acknowledge. So for them to acknowledge it in 1979 and being like, this is your fucking body and your decision and you do with it what you want, like, all right, still didn't need to be in the fucking movie. It's already like convoluted, muddied waters to begin with.
They were literally just trying to have that be the catalyst for them to steal the fucking mutant bear baby, because this movie would be 20 minutes long otherwise. They wouldn't have 5 chase scenes.
Yeah,
I
did like that, and I mean, obviously you could have done this with anything, but I did like that scene where the our lead scientist is putting the pieces together of the mercury poisoning and what that'll do to an infant, and she's sitting there having this knowledge of her pregnancy that she hadn't shared yet, and then so you have this 2 characters sort of like scene where one is talking about a subtext that they don't realize that they're talking about as we're actively watching our other lead like digest that and absorb that. I thought that was fun, but again, like, you kind of could have done that with anything. There's gonna be. I mean, look, I'm not the best writer, but I feel like there's another way we could have had a scene that involved knowledge and not. And
I also don't think that was a make or break scene. Like, it was cool.
No,
it was
cool, but it wasn't.
It's like if it wasn't there,
there wasn't a sleeping bag scene.
No, and
the sleeping bag scene's the only scene that they could not cut from this movie.
No, absolutely not. The scene that Kyle was talking about is very interesting because coming from an action director, maybe it really does fit. Maybe that's a thing in action movies where there's that, like, they have to do character development through exposition, and so because they can't do it any other way because it's an action movie, and so it's like gotta force this conversation somehow. So they did it, but it's just the idea of wanting to preserve life from like a scientific perspective is the husband, and then wanting to nurture life from like a maternal perspective is the mom's side, or the woman's side, the female lead side. I don't know. I don't like. It's not terrible, but in a 1979 perspective, it's probably progressive. But in a 2023 perspective, I'm a little just like, I just want to see the monster more. I don't really care about you having this like moral dilemma. But
it's so strange. Also, Kyle, what's the director's name? Because I keep almost saying Frank Henenlotter, and because it's like
John Frankenheimer.
Frankenheimer.
That's
which is
my name too.
John Frankenhooker. John Frankenhooker did this
exactly
movie.
What it sounds. That's my name too.
Yeah.
Whenever I go out, people always shout, "Holy shit, giant mutant bear monster!" That joke sucked.
He has gone on the record saying that he actually is really disappointed with this movie because he shot it as an R-rated film, and then the studio insisted he cut it down to a PG film.
Really?
But there were only PG and R.
There was G, PG,
and
R, and X were your options back then. But he's like, they cut out literally every scary scene, so all you're left with is like the dialogue without the like payoffs.
Yeah, and it's still somehow an hour and 45 minutes.
Dude,
it is
like
long.
When I sat down to watch this last night, in my head, I'm like, this is like 87 minutes, right? Like,
yeah.
It's because you've lulled yourself into this assumption that monster movies are short, and like. That, I think, is the number one reason why I've never picked Prophecy for the show. Because the reason why it should have been picked a billion times.
I realize I pick movies that I want to pick movies that only have people getting absolutely catapulted by
and
some
you
sort
get
of crush.
5 in this movie. And I love that because the monster, Katadin, I believe I'm saying it right.
I think so.
Is so obscenely powerful. She is
nuts.
Just a monstrous creature, and I love that. Also, I had to write this down. She was portrayed by the actor / stuntman Kevin Peter Hall. This dude was 7 feet 2 inches tall.
Yeah.
He also played the Predator in 1987 and Predator in the sequel in 1990.
Wow.
And he also played Bigfoot in Harry and the Hendersons. The dude, massively tall person.
That
but
rules.
I just love that the mutant bear is like so OP. Like it looks like when it backhands this little girl, this teenage. She's a total brat, by the way. She does not want to be out there hiking. She's listening to like disco on her Walkman.
I tried to look up that track afterwards. Sweet Ride. It's fucking rules. That track rules. Not on Spotify. Sorry, but it is on YouTube. And there's 9 comments.
I'll put it on our creature feature playlist. We'll have that.
There's like 9 comments. 3 of them are like Prophecy.
I do feel like it's so wild because like. This is like a thing that I always love / hate in a movie, which is like inconsistency, which is like, this mutant bear thing, which, side note, Leonard Maltin, who I believe gave this a bomb in his review book, I don't think finished the movie because he calls the creature a giant salmon.
No, a giant salami.
Giant salami. Yeah. Even
I wrote that note down as well. Yeah, I love how Leonard Maltin shits on everything that we talk about on this show.
He's the
He
king
hates
of it. But yeah, so this thing.
Except that didn't he love American Werewolf in American Werewolf in London? Is that like the only thing he liked that we
I mean, that's a
discussed?
movie that a lot of people love. He also gave Gremlins 2 a higher star rating than Gremlins 1, which is weird because he has a cameo in Gremlins 2.
Maybe that's not weird. It makes a whole lot of sense.
Maybe there was a little bit of sarcasm in the usage of the word weird that I didn't stress enough. But yeah, this creature backhands this girl, and she, upon impact of this tree, is just a pile of fluff. Not even blood. She's like evaporated as a human being when that happens.
Well,
but then towards the end, it hits our villain, and he goes flying, or our hero, and he goes flying, and he's pretty okay.
Well,
he's got
she's
like a
tired.
stretch. Yeah.
She's tired by the time she's catapulted 5 people. But
exhausted, no cliff bars.
Yeah, no cliff bars because there are no cliffs. It's just the forest. But here's the thing: is that people in 1979 would understand why that girl would turn into a pile of feathers, like a cloud of feathers, because she's in. And the thing that's the most hilarious addition to this is that she's in a full body sleeping bag that went over her head and only shows the oval of her face. And then she goes, ah, and immediately gets, destroyed into a giant rock. And it was a down-filled, like a goose down-filled, full body sleeping bag, which I don't think they exist anymore.
There's one shot where she's hopping around like a corn dog, and it's like the funny, let's all go to the movies, and then she gets fucking obliterated.
There's another edit we need to make. She sees the bear, jumps up, and that starts playing.
No ways to die.
But the there is this subtle brilliance in that too, because it's like, man, what a perfect way to have to completely just make the cut to change.
Yeah.
It to an empty thing that's exploding.
Oh my god, there's no fucking reason this family, I guess there is. There's a lead into the townsfolk then going after the OPs. OPs, is that... Okay, I need to know if OP is offensive, because then the way he fucking says OPs, and when he comes down and wants to arrest...
It's weird because I appreciate that it stands for original peoples. Yeah, but it does feel like a weird
79. Except for the fact that how many of the people that were playing native first people were, because I'm pretty sure the main guy was Amand Arsante, and he's not.
I was afraid to look. I was actually afraid to look up this information out of embarrassment and fear.
The one woman looked like a First People to me, but I saw her name on IMDb when I was looking, and it didn't sound like she was, but it might have also been like an Americanized name. Who knows?
Right. Right.
She had the look way more than Amand fucking Arsante.
That wasn't
Armand
he was great.
Asante. Man, that's
a tough one.
Tongue twister. But speaking of tongue twisters, Kyle, what are you putting on your tongue right now?
So I bought this beer because I thought it said Miles of Trails. It's called Miles of Trials. But it is put out by a brewery called Timber Ales.
All right, there we go.
We had a little double duty there. I thought it was going to be, what do we got?
I have a hazy beer hug. It's a beer hug. Now, Megan picked this because it had a bear on it. And you know how much sicker it would have been if Katadin had squished someone to death like the Toxic Crusader,
Yeah.
And
man, that's the sequel. That's the sequel I didn't know I wanted. Was Toxie comes and saves the day.
I knew that's what you wanted. All right, I let's be real here.
All right,
that crossover would be amazing.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any other notes on Prophecy?
I have a real fucking downer.
Oh, cool. What a way to end it.
Yeah. So the raccoon scene, right?
Oh no.
So. Here's a not fun fact about that raccoon. It was actually legitimately poisoned before that scene. I don't know what they did to it, but they poisoned that creature, and I don't think it survived the shoot. which also makes this movie like super hypocritical because it's trying to say like animals deserve to be left in peace, and they're like, here, eat this poison and then act for us. So
that's bad. That's unfortunate.
That's not great.
But also, this is the funny quote or the funny trivia that I wanted to end on. Apparently, someone on IMDb Trivia thought that viewers of the film would not know what EPA stands for.
Okay.
It said, interestingly, the EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency. No one found that interesting, though.
No. Uninteresting and unhelpful. Downvote the entire thing. That's bad. That is... So, well, you know what? Bless that person, because when they found that out, they must have had a eureka moment that was unlike any other.
They're like, I have something to talk about at parties now.
IMDb should also show the age of who submits that stuff, because it's like, if that person's 40, really sad. But if I saw that and it was like posted by Jeremiah, 8 years old, I'd be like, aw.
Yeah, I hope that Jeremiah is also a fucking Amish kid on Rumspringa and is finally learning about the English world, and that's why he's confused about what EPA
But then
stands
watch
for.
this because it was PG, so thought they were totally safe. They thought they
They're like,
totally
this is
safe
the
to
exact
watch
same
this.
rating as Moana.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
I love that this is shot in like Vancouver, acting as Maine. It's just like, you see these huge mountains in the background. And I know that Maine has, like Arcadia and other mountainous regions, but man, it ain't the Pacific Northwest. Let me tell you something.
No.
That's odd.
One last thing I want to bring up is the very final shot. It's like, we've saved the day, helicopters flying off, and then just very quick pan to what was already like not a great bear animatronic head that like you were doing a great job of keeping in the shadows for most of the part, just in broad daylight, just like, right in front of the camera.
That's literally me when I wake up and I don't know where I am after a long nap in an afternoon. My eyes look the exact same.
I've gotten better. Honestly, during the time that we've done this podcast and I've had to travel more than I used to have to travel, I've gotten a little bit better at being like, I don't know where I am for like a couple seconds when I'm waking up. But man, yeah, when you're like crashing on a friend's couch after like sleeping in your own bed for a decade, that you're like, what happened? Who kidnapped me?
Did I make this choice?
I feel like Matt's like, finally, I got kidnapped. And that's definitely in your bucket list of shit to do. I know it.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Kyle, you picked this bad boy.
Oh yeah. We need to see what Kyle
I need
wants
to know what are you going to make us watch to make up for it?
Well, I'm going to share Carly's double feature first, which was Aaron Brockovich. And then
Perfect.
I'm going to choose Piranha, which I think does a similar thing with much more pizzazz.
All right. No, I agree with that.
Pizzazz.
It's got more humor, less exploding sleeping bags though.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah,
So you got to balance it out.
More rewatchability for original Piranha. OP, as we like to call it. But the absolute over the topness. I mean, you have to go with Piranha 3D to get a much better vibe if you're trying to.
Honestly, Piranha 2, like Piranha 2 is
with
so
the
slept
flying-
on as ridiculous.
I don't think that it slept on. We did a great episode on it.
We
Thanks to
did,
you.
but
I
I
forgot
mean,
that we did that episode the last time we talked about Piranha 2.
I forgot
gotta go
that
back
you were
and
on
watch
that
it.
episode.
Yeah.
there's a couple episodes that Kyle's on that I'm like, that's right, he showed up on that one too.
Yeah.
All right, how
He's
about you,
always
Scott?
been
We'll
here.
go to you.
So I have a lot, but I'm gonna go with The Bay. From was that 2015?
Okay.
Like the like.
I thought you were talking about Steven.
No, not the Stephen Bay.
Just going to hang out.
Yeah, just Stephen Bay. Show me your VHS collection.
Yeah. He's probably got this tape.
Oh, I'm positive that he has this on Betamax. But no, The Bay is about the Chesapeake Bay, I believe, and they like stirred up all this shit on the bottom, and it created these like monster. What are those water bugs called? They when they get very large, they're a parasitic exoskeletal bug, and they will sometimes chew off a fish's tongue and replace the tongue. So that like you open up.
I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so they describe it as massive mutated tongue-eating lice.
Lice, yes, sea lice. Okay. That's what it is. They have like some other name as well,
things.
but
yeah.
but that's actually it's a found footage movie. I don't love the movie, but I remember being icked by it.
It's a great poster. Yeah.
It's a great poster, and it's actually a pretty effective found footage movie.
Nice.
I would rewatch that. It's not. You could also be real 2023 and do Cocaine Bear, which I feel is very on the nose. Or you could literally just go to East Palestine, Ohio, and hang out there and see what kind of mutations are going to happen in 20 years of the disaster that happened in February. So
yeah, there you go. And
now, what about you?
I went with, if you're playing the bingo card Matt's double feature game, you can check off alligator on this. Just giant creature brought on by pollution. Sure, let's watch it.
I think that yours might be the most watchable of that might be the best double feature of all of them.
That is a movie that I could literally. So a friend asked me today, like, what song could you listen to 1,000 times and not be sick of? And I had a couple of those, but I think Alligator's on that same list of like, what's a movie you could watch 1,000 times and not get tired of it? And I think I've gotten close to watching Alligator 1,000 times at this point in my life.
That's insane. I would expect you to be near 500. 1,000 is kind of like an inhuman feat.
It's probably about 500, but there was definitely there was a solid summer where we watched it every single day at my cousin's house. We're like, let's watch Alligator again.
That's 60 viewings right there in one
right
summer.
there. And then that is like a 2 or 3 times a year viewing for me. Like I'm always looking for an excuse. Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle. Tell us what you want to talk about.
Yeah, please regale us with tales.
Yeah,
regale.
Yeah. So
we need a tale to be regaled.
So Carly, I'm not going to go into detail about these movies because they don't need much detail, but let me just tell you about the marathon day that Carly and I had when I went with her so that she could finish up her tattoo. She has a arm sleeve of a pythos. It's a vine.
Pothos?
Yes. It's a vine that grows and clings to the walls. And when her dad gave her a piece of that plant, he had passed away, so she got this huge tattoo. It's not like a sleeve, but it wraps around her whole arm. So like there's room to put other stuff around it, but it's beautiful. But she went to go get it colored in. And I just took the day off and I was like, fuck it, I'll go and just hang out and do some work there or whatever. But in this tattoo parlor, Black Hatchet Tattoo in Wallingford, Connecticut, amazing artist. The owner is a big horror guy and does some amazing horror tattoos. But she was tattooed by this woman, Jessica, and on the TV, we watched 5 movies. We walk in to the shop and they're already playing Hereditary first thing in the morning, 10 a.m.
That is a
rough awake right there.
Really crazy way to start the day, and they felt the same way. So
tattoo
we don't
shops
watch any...
are crazy like that. You go in at 10 a.m. and they're like listening to grindcore or watching Hereditary. It's just, but they're also like the sweetest people. It's crazy.
It's 2 things. It's tattoo shops, and it's like hipster bars.
Mm-hmm. It was crazy. So like, she's getting prepped and we're watching, she like, luckily she wasn't tattooing when the telephone pole scene happened. Like we were still prepping at that point. But anyway, after that, they have 2 modes. They have horror or they have like comedy, so we then just go the full comedy route from here on out. We go, we go Role Models,
nice.
Which I forgot was David Wayne, Wet Hot American Summer, and it holds up. Like, it's really funny.
It's cool movie because it's literally him attempting to do Wet Hot American Summer as a more mainstream movie.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like
Yeah.
that humor translates so well.
It does.
It's so
it does.
weird.
And he's been successful, maybe not like financially successful, but like creatively successful with those movies.
I think it
and
actually
that,
did shockingly well. I think
that,
that
Role
I
Models
think
did
it,
well.
I think Role Models outperformed. All of those dudes kind of have since. Like, not all like successfully financially, but like even Michael Showalter made like The Baxter, which is such a like, it's so in the vein of Wet Hot American Summer with its humor, but in a much more like digestible way for a mainstream audience. Like, it's not as like over your head with it.
No, it was a blast, and then they put on Goon immediately after, which I had never seen, and Goon is
that is such a they're just roller coastering your emotions.
well, and then on the wall they have a whole like thing of Goon tattoos, so somebody there loves it. And then I Love You, Man, and then
great movie,
Cable Guy.
absolutely great movie.
Yeah, I Love You, Man. I hadn't seen. That was a first time watch for me, and that was lovely.
That's such a great way to spend your day.
Yeah. Oh my god, it was great. And then Cable Guy, which we had already watched recently. But she was finishing up, and like we were kind of like in and out of it. But that was a day that we spent together watching tattoos. I was not or watching movies while Carly got tattooed. I was not in pain. She was, and it was great.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good time. I want to say a party, but it's
good.
a party where one of you leaves bleeding.
Yes. Yeah.
So a couple months back, Megan was editing photos and she came across this movie on Netflix called Do Revenge, and she started watching it and she was like, oh, Scott would like this. Oh, Scott would really like this. Well, then she finished it and she was like, oh, well, I'll just tell Scott about it and we can watch it together. Last week she was like, let's watch Do Revenge. We have no shows that are coming out right now, like we're in a lull. We have no movies that are on the docket right now, so to watch together. So we started watching it, and then she left town, and so I finished it. And also Matt has a very odd relationship with my wife where he texts her more than he texts me. Matt said, and I fucking quote, if Scott doesn't love this movie as much as you, Megan, you get to be the next co-host of Horror Movie Night. I didn't love it as much as her, so I guess this is my last episode.
No, I think I just said if
swan
Scott
song.
doesn't love it, period. But still.
Oh, I enjoyed my watch, but I realized that I am not the target audience.
Yeah,
Even
but know
as-
who
even
is?
as a millennial, I'm
Matt
not-
Kelly.
Well,
Matt Kelly
you
was
and
prime.
my wife, because that movie is way more, it's way more Cruel Intentions than Can Hardly Wait.
It's
and that's
definitely
why
the
I didn't
leader
like it
hit.
as much as I was expecting.
Well, did she show you the posters that I sent her that the director shared, where it was like parody
Yeah.
posters of like Heather's
super cool.
Jawbreaker? Like it is firmly in that vein. I've explained it to people.
the Jawbreaker
so we haven't,
one was perfect.
The Jawbreaker one was spot on. The way that I've explained it to people is it is literally Mean Girls meet strangers on a train. It's so fucking brilliant. It's so fun to me. Like, I think it just nails this vibe that I didn't know I missed as much as I did. So like when I was watching, I was just like, oh, I'm home. But the concept is two girls who have a chance encounter meeting each other, and they go to the same school, but they've both been horribly embarrassed by somebody. And they make a deal where they're like, if I get revenge on the person who embarrassed me, everyone will know it's me. So they trade off and say, like, I'll get revenge on the person who ruined your life if you get revenge on the person who ruined my life. So that's where your strangers on a train portion comes from. But it's also this dynamic of one is like the super popular girl who's like probably going to be valedictorian, and the other one's like kind of nerdy and new to the school. So in order for nerdy girl to get revenge on the popular girl's friends, they have to also make her popular. And that's where kind of the Mean Girls aspect comes in, of like taking this person, getting them into this clique, and then that person fitting in a little too much with the clique and causing issues with the plan. But it's the soundtrack nails like that late 90s, early 2000s feel.
Wild.
Yeah. Dude,
I was
La Tigre
uncomfortable.
popped up. I had not thought about that band in like 2 decades. It's like,
Bro,
but-
that is bullshit. I have seen your iTunes before.
but yeah, it was I was like, I am really into this. I'm loving it. I do think it could be like 15, 20 minutes
It was
shorter.
a bit long
Yeah.
for a teen comedy, but at the same time, it's not really a teen comedy. It's way more Heather's black comedy. It's Heather's and Cruel Intentions, which if anybody has ever met my wife, they know that she loves black comedy. Like White Lotus was absolutely her shit. She just loves that, and I don't. I don't like people being assholes. I don't find it funny, and she does because the stakes are just different in her mind.
Yeah.
But
See,
this
for
movie
me,
is
I
definitely like bad people doing bad things.
Yeah.
You know.
But there's so
that
many.
was
I don't
that
know.
was what kept me from loving it.
Yeah. Anytime that Maya Hawke referred to her as Revenge Mommy.
Revenge Mommy. Yeah.
She's like,
what
I'll do whatever you say, Revenge Mommy. I was like,
if nothing else. Absolutely nothing else from that movie. I am so happy to walk away with that little slice.
And also just, I do have to say it, man. Maya Hawke is a fucking beast. And I will pretty much watch anything
great.
she shows up in because she just kills it. But yeah, Do Revenge was also the thing I watched. I had a feeling we were going to be talking about this right now. So I switched my, what did I watch at the last second?
Baby, there's always next week.
Yeah, there's next
Oh,
week,
with
baby.
you and Megan. Because I'm not going to be here. It's been real, Kyle.
Hey,
All right,
always
well-
a pleasure. Can't wait to hang out with your wife more.
Yep. All right. Goodbye, Scott. And we'll be back next week with our new third co-host.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.